Hey, this is Brian Jackson, Ableton-Certified trainer, and I teach here at 343 Labs in New York City. All right, so today we're going to pick up where we left off last time, where we talked about audio interfaces and basic connections. I brought with me an assortment of adapters that I've collected over the years, and we're going to look at a whole bunch of different types of connections that you might need in your studio. So once you have an audio interface, and once you have any instrument like a synth, a drum machine, or a guitar, or a microphone, you're going to need to start working with cables instead of just doing everything directly on your laptop. Okay, so two of the most common cables you're going to have in your studio are going to be what's known as an XLR cable, most commonly in home studios called a mic cable. But really what this is just a high quality balanced connection that allows you to go from a microphone to your audio interface or from pro equipment to pro equipment. You could also use this, say, to go from your mixer or audio interface in some cases to your studio monitors. So the next most common cable people are going to have around is probably going to be an instrument cable. Instrument cable would be used for electric guitar, electric bass, some synthesizers, and this would go from the instrument into the instrument input on your audio interface. All right, so one of the most important things to make sure when you have a bunch of 1/4 inch cables laying around is that you grab the one with the correct connector for what you're doing. As you can see here, these look very similar, but one of them has one little black piece of plastic here and one has two black pieces of plastic. And this one would be suitable for guitar, perhaps, and this would be more for pro audio equipment. Let's talk a little bit about balanced and unbalanced. I'm going to keep this short and just talk about some essentials. So the basic idea between a balanced cable and an unbalanced cable really comes down to how long of a cable you can run without worrying about how much noise you're going to pick up. So if I was using this instrument cable, which is unbalanced, I would not be worried about picking up noise if I was only running it a few feet, except in some weird situations. Whereas if I wanted to run a connection for 20 feet, 30 feet, I would not want to use an unbalanced connection because I would have a higher probability of picking up noise, such as hum or buzz or even the radio. Some equipment simply will not work with balanced connections like this, such as the output of most guitars or even some synthesizers. But in many cases, you're going to want to run something like this out of professional keyboards, drum machines, and synths. And definitely when you're connecting professional equipment to professional equipment, which would include most better audio interfaces and of course any actual outboard mixers. Okay, so this cable that we're going to come back to in a little bit, which has two wires on each end, this is neither balanced or unbalanced because there's actually no ground connection. Ground is simply a way of talking about the way a circuit is going to take any extra electricity and literally put it down into the earth. And this will make sense when I come back to it a little bit later. Now that we've looked at mic cables and instrument cables, the next most common one is going to be a 1/4 inch tip ring sleeve. Now it's called tip ring sleeve because we actually have 3 points of contact inside of this cable. And you can see two black pieces of plastic that are separating the pieces of metal from each other. Inside of this cable are actually 3 different wires, whereas inside of our instrument cable, we're only going to have 2 wires. So in most cases, the tip is going to tell you how many wires are actually inside of the cable. A TRS cable like this is primarily going to be used to connect pro line level out to some sort of pro line level in. And that would be, say, a modern keyboard into a mixer or the output of your audio interface into your professional monitors. Okay, so if you're dealing with a microphone, you're going to have an XLR cable like this. If you're dealing with a guitar or other instrument, even possibly some synthesizers, you're going to have your instrument cable, which will just be tip sleeve. And when you're dealing with a number of different pieces of pro audio equipment, you may benefit or need to use your tip ring sleeve 1/4 inch, which of course looks similar until you look a little bit closer. Using some of the adapters that I brought with me today, let's go over some of the maybe less common cables and connections that you might find in your home studio. Starting on the left, let's look at RCA connectors. These have been around forever and are primarily associated with consumer electronics, but also DJ equipment because a lot of DJ equipment runs at the same line levels as consumer home electronics. So looking at these connectors, this would be for some sort of stereo connection for our left and for our right. And we can see that we have 2 points of contact. We have the sleeve here and then we have the pin. Now, another really common connector you're going to bump into is the mini plug. And this is essentially like a tiny 1/4 inch. In this case, it's TRS. If we look very closely, we can see 2 pieces of plastic. and then this breaks out to left and right. This adapter could be used to, say, go from any TRS 1/4 inch connector to your mini plug TRS. Now, something like this is probably going to be pretty rare in a modern home studio. This would basically be used to split a mono mini plug into a dual mono RCA. Now, this kind of adapter could be more useful in a modern studio. I could go from my mini plug TRS into 2 different 1/4 inch signals. So notice that even with these less common types of connectors, it's really about looking at the actual connector itself and noticing whether it has 2 points of contact or 3 points of contact. Another cable that you might have in your studio is going to be old school speaker cable. Now, this will still show up in some home studios because of some of the smaller monitors that may ship with this. And here we can see I have 2 wires. Now, this is different than the 2 wires that are in here in an important way. In this instrument cable, I have 1 wire for the signal and 1 that goes to the shield that essentially goes to ground. Here I have just for the left and right, so there is no way to send electricity to ground with this cable. Don't use it incorrectly. Now, speaker cable can also look a lot like an instrument cable. So if you play guitar or bass and you have an amplifier that goes into a speaker cabinet, do not use this instrument cable as your speaker cable. Worst case scenario, you can actually start a fire. Today we looked at a whole bunch of different cables and connectors. Some of them you're very likely to see in your home studio, other ones maybe not as often, but now you should have a better idea on which one you can use or should use at different times. Hopefully you found this video helpful. I'm Brian Jackson here at 343 Labs in New York City. For more information on our courses in New York City, Berlin, or online, go to 343labs.com. Thanks for watching. See you again next time.